The market is in a healthy state. Pretty much everything is going up. Some assets outperform. They might outperform because of leverage, because of manipulation. But for Bonk, things tend to be quite healthy. Let's have a look at the data most people are not considering, and let's try to figure out how much higher Bonk can go, where the end of this rally could potentially be. Now have a look at the top meme coins based on their market cap. Official Trump outperformed everything else in the last week, and that's because of the dinner announcement of attaching a value to the Trump token. But Bonk is a close second. What's going on? Of course, everything is appreciating, but Bonk is gaining quite consistently and is currently at a price of 4 zeros and 2 roughly. Now, the first time I talked about Bonk on this channel was 1.5 years ago, and that video outperformed. So the average video is shown in gray and the Bonk video is this blue line over here. At the time, the price was at 504. And again, now we are only at 402. So there was roughly a 5x from that video. But that outperformance did not happen without drama. We had our massive pump and dumps in between. One of those crashes was more than 80% in magnitude. And it looks like many things have changed for Bonk. For example, the liquidity moved away from the Solana chain to the market makers and to the centralized exchanges. Because while the market cap of Bonk is 1.5 billion, the largest liquidity pool on chain on Solana is 1.5 million over here or 1.4 million over here. So that's only 0.1% of the market cap for each of those LPs. And so when I saw this recent rally in Bonk, I was skeptical. My very first idea was probably that's manipulation by the market makers. Probably there's a lot of leverage in the price, as we currently see, for example, for the virtual protocol. But that's actually not true. The spot trading volume is currently at roughly 100 million. The perpetual futures trading volume isn't that much higher. So it's not just leverage enabled through the perps that's moving the price. Also, in the funding rate of perpetual futures on Bonk, we don't really see that much of a shift. We're just constantly slightly bullish. It's relatively regular behavior. This rally is definitely not caused by a short squeeze. There aren't enough short positions out there on Bonk. We also don't see any liquidations with that rally. So again, this is not a short squeeze. This is not a rally that will deflate because market makers manipulate the price to the upside to force people to buy the token. And so let's then, instead of looking at the derivatives market, go back on chain. Who has a lot of the tokens on chain? Now we've got 921,000 wallets on Solana that hold Bonk, almost 1 million. That's huge. But of course, not all of those wallets are created equal. There are some bot accounts as well. They might only own a few cents worth of the token. Let's have a look at a proper split up. Now here we've got the number of first-time traders versus recurring traders over the last month. There isn't really that much of a change. Yes, some recurring traders are starting to trade the token again, but there's not a lot of inflow of new investors that push up the price. We also see more activity around the number of token transactions per day. The trading volume itself hasn't yet spiked though. So this is something to look out for. When the trading volume goes very, very high on a particular day, it might make sense to take profit. So let's just cross-check this. Let's say we've got the 12th of November of 2024. That was over here when the price was already high. Then more trading volume on the centralized exchanges followed. And on the day when the trading volume was the highest, the price also tended to be extremely close to the top. So we want to trade counter-cyclical. We want to rather sell when trading volume is high, but currently the volume isn't elevated. So again, this speaks towards this current rally being rather healthy. The market is not yet heated. It's the same for decentralized and centralized exchanges. The fraction of trading volume done by the smaller wallets also tends to rather rise. However, the wallets that hold at least 50 million Bonk tokens, so that's now worth roughly $1,000 worth of the token, that number didn't really go up. But the number of whale wallets that hold 5 billion worth of the token, that did grow. So it's the big guys that are buying here. It's the whales that purchase Bonk directly on chain, not via perpetual futures, not via any short-term levered bet. Instead, it's long-term conviction by the smart money, by the heavyweights. Again, another sign that this rally in Bonk might continue. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball either, right? I don't know where prices are going. We're all just working with probabilities. We're trying to figure out what's behind a rally and whether or not the demand might continue. Now, how much higher can Bonk go from here? Let's have a look at the relative valuation chart to Solana. So that's this one over here. It shows Bonk relative to SOL over time, and while we didn't necessarily see that much outperformance in the last months, the current momentum is bullish, and there's a good chance that Bonk will outperform Solana by another 40% from here. I'm not saying that we can't go even higher than that, but it does make sense to take some profit at that point. Now finally, we enter a market again where everything is going up, and I think it's important to seize the opportunity, not just randomly buy things, but buy the things that tend to go up more than others. Now that's easier said than done, but let's have a look at Virtual, for example. How can we find something like Virtual's protocol not just a week ago, but how can we pick it up early, as in when it just was a few cents? I don't think that we have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to be the best traders on the planet to figure this out. We can just have a look at the people that tend to move markets, that tend to make good trades. For example, here's somebody that did not necessarily always do the best trades. So here are signals by Ben Armstrong. He got some virtual tokens very early on allocated for a promotion. He sold this for very low prices, 1.4, 1.3 cents. So yeah, following people like Ben Armstrong or BitBoy Crypto is probably not the best idea. But there are some people that do make regularly very nice trades. For example, this guy over here, Brian Young. He's got more than 2 million subscribers and he mainly talks about crypto. He was one of the very first influencers that we track that bought virtual token for very low prices. 15K over here for 7 cents. The community talked about this quite a bit, 61 comments. That was more than 1 year ago on the 21st of March 2024. And so the rest is history. The price went up by more than 6,000%, even after a subsequent crash and then the current recovery. The price is still up by almost 2,000%. Crypto is not necessarily a game where the people with the best fundamental analysis win. I think it's much more of a player versus player game. It's much more of a game of insiders versus the not so well informed retail investor. Even though YouTubers like Brian Young do very good crypto content and they also trade well, it's very hard to figure out where do they actually put their money and how much do they invest. Even when I search here for the Virtuals token, I can't even find a dedicated video on Virtual on his channel. The token might be hidden somewhere in those list videos, but that's about it. Now the first dedicated video on Virtual's protocol was published half a year ago over here. That video outperformed the average video. The average video is here in gray and the performance of that video is in blue. At the time, the price was at 41 cents. And even from that point onwards, we went up by more than 1,000%. So I publish videos on various altcoins regularly on this channel. I try to find the ones that still have a lot of upside potential. So feel free to subscribe over here. Now, if it's that easy to make money just by looking at what other people are doing, how do we actually know that early what, say, BitBoy Crypto or what Brian Young is doing? The answer is wallet tracking. With some on-chain analytics, we found out what kind of wallet is owned by what influencer. For example, over here, we found 5 wallets of Brian Young. In total, we track almost 600 wallets. So that's of various influencers. And the way we find those wallets is by looking at what kind of NFTs are they holding, what kind of tokens are they holding. Let's say they share in a video that they have $150,000 worth of a very small token. There aren't too many wallets that might own that amount. We're looking at related wallets, deposit addresses on centralized exchanges. We're doing all kinds of small tips and tricks, and those are all explained here in this little tutorial course on wallet discovery. So that can be found below at thebitcoinstrader.com. And so the premium community of this channel is focusing on that. We try to find new wallets, we share those wallets with others, and then we track the wallets. And then sometimes we find out that some influencers aren't always ethical. For example, here's a video by one influencer that talked about the Champ token just after we got the buying alert. So that's then the way it works, right? The influencer buys a small cap cryptocurrency and then afterwards promotes it on the social media following, and then the social media following is buying into the token, pushing up the price even further. So a classical pump and dump, and the winners are always the people that buy in early, before all of that social media publishing has been done. That's what the wallet tracking is so useful for. And so clearly it's time to make money again. Since October of 2023, more and more money is flowing into the market. The stablecoin market cap is going up. So as per tendency, cryptocurrencies should go up in price. Now the problem is that returns are very concentrated in just a few winners, right? It's a winner takes most game. It's player versus player. And the vast majority of people still lose even in market conditions like this. But yeah, we are tracking those almost 600 wallets. We've got our dedicated influencer trade channel. And when we see insiders like the Memecoin or Based AI team accumulating a very small market cap token, for example over here, KEK, that's a signal of today, then it's likely that the price rises, right? There are all these accumulation buys, and as long as insiders buy more and more of a very small token, things tend to go up. So this is now an appreciation of almost 200% over the span of a week. And so yeah, there are two ways to make money. We can simply just take random tokens and they are likely going to appreciate to a degree. But if we want to take full opportunity of this market, it's better to follow the smart money, right? It's better to buy the virtual protocols of this world when it's just a few cents worth of a token and then moves to several dollars. I'm of course sharing my own trades in premium as well. That goes without saying. And so feel free to check it out. It's currently $125 per month. There should be a link somewhere here on the screen, probably at the bottom right, that leads you directly to that page. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube or see you in premium. Cheers.